talk with someone right now who's been pretty critical himself of the president's performance as commander-in-chief, Republican Senator John McCain of Arizona. Senator, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
All right, you got the headlines there. You've seen the articles in the Washington Post and the New York Times. What's your instinctive, immediate reaction to what you hear from Robert Gates?
Well, he certainly was one of the most respected men I've ever known in Washington, and he's not just one of these ordinary public servants. He served, I believe, 5 presidents, and so I think his words will have a significant impact, and frankly, I'm a little surprised because a lot of times people are not quite as candid as it appears that his book is.
Well, do you agree with him about the president when he says, "I never doubted Obama's support for the troops in Afghanistan, only a support for their mission"? You agree with Gates on that pretty severe criticism?
Oh, sure. I mean, look, did you ever hear the president talk about Afghanistan without talking about that we were leaving? Look what's happening in Iraq, a place where we lost 95 killed and 600 wounded in Fallujah is now black flags of al-Qaeda are flying, and anybody who tells you that it's Maliki's fault we don't have troops there is not telling you the truth. So, and in Afghanistan, obviously, he hasn't spoken to Karzai since last July. Since last July was the last time he had a conversation with Karzai. And so we are now seeing a replay of Iraq, and that's a complete withdrawal, and you may see the same result in Afghanistan as we are seeing in Iraq.
Well, are you saying you would like to send troops back into Iraq to deal with the al-Qaeda threat in Fallujah?
No, what I would like to see is us give the kind of support that is necessary with logistics, intelligence. There's all kinds of ways that we can be of assistance to them with capabilities that they don't have. But of course not sending. American people would never stand for sending troops back into battle. But also, before we did that, we'd have to have Maliki embark on a reconciliation with the Sunni because he has alienated the Sunni, and that's been one of the major factors in this whole opening of Anbar for al-Qaeda to take advantage of. And so you'd have to see a change in behavior on Maliki's part before we extend this kind of assistance. But none of this would have happened, in my view, if we had left a contingent behind that would have been have influence to counter now the increasing Iranian influence, and also been helpful to him in guiding him in a different path than the one that he took.
You know what the president says. He says he wanted to leave a contingent of U.S. troops in Iraq, 5 or 10,000 or whatever, but Nouri al-Maliki, the Shiite leader of Iraq, refused to grant those American soldiers and Marines and sailors and airmen immunity from Iraqi prosecution. As a result, the U.S. had no choice but to pull out.
You know, I might have had given some credence to that if it hadn't been for the fact that Joe Lieberman, Lindsey Graham, and I were in Iraq. We saw Barzani. He was ready to go. Alawi was ready to go. We met with Maliki. We said to Maliki said, "Okay, I will do it. How many troops?" And they said, we turned to the ambassador and General Austin. They said, "Well, we don't know the number of troops." I came back here. I called Mr. Donlan. I said, "How many troops?" He said he couldn't tell us how many troops, one left behind or their missions. And General Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that the number of troops we wanted to leave there, in his words, cascaded down to 3,500. That would have been meaningless. And so, of course, Maliki didn't want the deal because it was meaningless. And anybody who tells you any different from that is not telling you the truth, because I was there.
Let's get back to what Robert Gates is writing in his new book. A couple of quotes, and I'll get your reaction. He says this about the Vice President, Joe Biden. You worked with him in the Senate for many years. "I think Vice President Biden has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Are you that harsh on Joe Biden?
I have the greatest affection for Joe Biden and respect, and I've never had a discussion or an argument with him that became personal. He's one of the finest men that I've known, but he has been wrong on a lot of these issues. There's very little doubt about that, going back to Desert Storm.
Has he been wrong on almost every issue over 4 decades?
I don't know. Can't recount them, but he has been wrong on a number of occasions, and he was one of the factors in the whole removal of all of our troops from Iraq, and I have heard that his people are also not too unhappy if there's a zero option in Afghanistan. I don't know if that's true or not.
He's pretty harsh on the Obama administration, Robert Gates, but you know what? He's pretty harsh on Congress, too. And I'll read you another quote. This from an article he has in the Wall Street Journal that he's just released. Congress is best viewed from a distance. The farther, the better. Because up close, it is truly ugly. I saw most of Congress as uncivil, incompetent at fulfilling their basic constitutional responsibilities, such as timely appropriations, micromanagerial, parochial, hypocritical, egotistical, thin-skinned, and prone to put self and re-election before country. Harsh words about the body you serve in for so many years.
Well, I think that, may I say first, I agree with a lot of what he said, but also the job that he had as Secretary of Defense was probably the most frustrating that anybody can have. That's where a lot of the parochialism comes in. That's where a lot of the frustration that he feels comes in.